Hey everyone, it's Miss Fusaro here, and I'm going to read the prologue of Beowulf to you from the Burton Raffel translation. And this is an edited version, an edited translation that is much more succinct than the full version. If I were to recommend the full version, if anybody really likes this, I would recommend the Seamus Heaney full version. But on to the prologue, and the purpose of this is I want you to be able to hear the language, especially looking for stock epithets and kennings as demonstrated in the first lesson. So I want you to listen for that. And appositives. So stock epithets, kennings, and appositives. I want you to listen for that and hear how they use this language, especially all the figurative language, to create such descriptive epic poetry. Okay, on to the reading. Hear me. We've heard of Danish heroes, ancient kings, and the glory they cut for themselves, swinging mighty swords. How Scyld made slaves of soldiers from every land. Crowds of captives he'd beaten into terror. He traveled to Denmark alone, an abandoned child, but changed his own fate, lived to be rich and much honored. He ruled land on all sides. Wherever the sea would take them, his soldiers sailed, returned with tribute and obedience. There was a brave king, and he gave them more than his glory, conceived a son for the Danes, a new leader allowed them by the grace of God. They had lived before his coming, kingless and miserable. Now the Lord of all life, ruler of glory, blessed them with the prince, Beo, whose power and fame soon spread through the world. Scyld's strong son was the glory of Denmark. His father's warriors were wound round his heart with golden rings, bound to their prince by his father's treasure. So young men build the future, wisely open-handed in peace, protected in war. So warriors earn their fame, and wealth is shaped with the sword. When his time was come, the old king died. Still strong, but called to the Lord's hands. His comrades carried him down to the shore, bore him as their leader had asked, their lord and companion, while words can move on his tongue. Scyld's reign had been long, he'd ruled them well. There in the harbor was a ring-proud fighting ship, its timbers icy, waiting. And there they brought the beloved body of their ring-giving lord, and laid him near the mast. Next to that noble corpse they heaped up treasures, jeweled helmets, hooked swords and coats of mail, armor carried from the ends of the earth. No ship had ever sailed so brightly fitted, no king sent forth more deeply mourned. Forced to set him adrift, floating as far as the tide might run, they refused to give him less from their hoards of gold than those who'd shipped him away, an orphan and a beggar, to cross the waves alone. High up over his head they flew his shining banner, then sadly let the water pull at the ship, watched it slowly sliding to where neither rulers nor heroes nor anyone can say whose hands opened to take that motionless cargo. Then Beo was king in that Danish castle, Scyld's son ruling as long as his father and as loved, a famous lord of men. He in turn gave his people a son, the great Halfdane, a fierce fighter who led the Danes to the end of his long life and left them 4 children, 3 princes to guide them in battle, Hergar and Hrothgar and Halga the Good, and one daughter, Irs, who was given to Onela, king of the Swedes, and became his wife and their queen. Then Hrothgar, taking the throne, led the Danes to such glory that comrades and kinsmen swore by his sword, and young men swelled his armies, and he thought of greatness and resolved to build a hall that would hold his mighty band and reach higher toward heaven than anything that had ever been known to the sons of men. And in that hall he'd divide the spoils of their victories, to old and young what they'd earned in a battle, but leaving the common pastures untouched and taking no lives. The work was ordered, the timbers tied and shaped by the host that Hrothgar ruled. It was quickly ready, that most beautiful of dwellings, built as he'd wanted, And then he whose word was obeyed all over the earth named it Herat. His boast came true, he commanded a banquet, opened out his treasureful hands. That towering place, gabled and huge, stood waiting for time to pass, for war to begin, for flames to leap as high as the feud that would light them, and for Herat to burn.